What's up, amigos? Commander Jaime here today, and I'm super excited to have the opportunity to have another top 8 interview. And today we have Kawal. So, Kawal, you want to say hi and a few things?
Hi there, everyone. My name is Kawal Bhatia, all short for Kawal. I am the BCS Richmond top 8 player that got top 8 with Astral Poets at the event. Went X1, finished 6th overall. Unfortunately, couldn't get the World's invite, but I'll take it. I'll take the top 8 for now.
No, it's still good, in your eyes. And I know you and I have been briefly chatting to a little bit before. This was your first event, right?
Yeah, it was my first event. It was my first Bushiroad event altogether.
Awesome. And so the viewers just so know, Kawal has also used Metafy too. So he's also had coaching sessions with me, but also with Charlie as well. So I just want to let the viewers know up front that he's a Metafy student at this point too. So without further ado, let's just get into more like your experience, get to know you a little bit, and also your deck list. So we'll start off where are you from? Like what local communities do you have?
So I'm from Calgary, Alberta, Canada here, and the local community we have is located at Sentry Box Cards. This is the only shop we have for Vanguard, but it's, we usually get about 20, 25 people, maybe 30 on a good day, kind of local scenes. And then notably, this is also home of Sergio Reyes. He's a 2-time Worlds invited player. There's been a few more. Like last year, we sent 3 players to Worlds from Calgary alone.
That's
and then
amazing.
This year, and so this year, unfortunately, only Sergio is going to Worlds, but we're still like a strong community, I would say, for Vanguard.
No, I agree. As long as one gets back to it every year, right?
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
A good accomplishment. But that's really good. You sent 3 Worlds players. Wow, that's from our locals. That's really good, actually.
Yeah, and then if you count our sister city, Edmonton, we had a 4th player. So like if you count our
that's
up
cool.
north, and that's like 4 players from our local province that went to Worlds last year.
Gotcha. Sounds cool. What the second thing that I like to ask players too is when you went into this event, what did you do for your preparation and maybe your mindset behind it?
I guess for me, regional prep was kind of hard because I had
oh really?
I didn't do much for V Premium because the format was already it was just whatever was left over from the Steam Maiden dominance.
Yeah.
And so what happened was that I last year I came to the conclusion that Valkyrian, the deck I played, could beat Steam Maidens and kind of run through that deck without much issues. So the question was, would Valkyrian run through the meta that was left over? And it kind of ran through it has struggling matchups, but this BCS was more about finding out more about understanding how those decks piloted and not how my deck piloted. Because Valkyrian is a snowball high roll deck. It's So you're not fighting your opponent. Sometimes you're fighting your own deck, right? You're fighting the luck of the game. Yeah. And so that kind of came into play a lot as well.
Gotcha. Interesting. Because one, you already know how to play your deck. 2, the format has been something that you've already seen over the years. So sometimes you may not need as much practice. But the biggest thing for you, it sounds like it was just knowing the matchups, basically, right?
Yeah, it was just watching pilots of certain decks. For example, I knew Luard was a top tier deck. I knew Nyros was a top tier deck.
Yep.
I knew Anj and Thavas were going to be highly represented. And I've played Leopold in the past, so I know those decks, that deck pretty well. And so it's more about understanding those and watching those players play their decks and kind of learning from that.
Yeah, that'll get you far, especially since you already have that foundational stuff already taken care of. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It makes it easier for you to
100%.
And that preparation too. We can start diving into more of your deck list. So feel free to point out some of the key things that you want to point out. And so
I guess first of all is of course how good the Eostis Dragon is, the blue Astral Poet right there, the white. This would kind of be the strongest card of the deck, I would argue. Just being able to get because I treat force markers as an additional plus. So decay is, if you theoretically look at it, is that you're spending a card to get 2 cards, but if you get the 2 Astral Poets, you get a marker. So that's technically a +3 right there.
Okay.
So Eostis is effectively a free +2 because you're grabbing a Valkyrian and then immediately getting a marker, regardless of the conditions. So making it such a good card. It also has that perfect guard ability that really didn't come up in regionals because a lot of my games just ended on turn 3 in Swiss. And so that really didn't come up. I think otherwise, this is your very typical Valkyrian list. The Gleipnir is something that is a flex spot for a lot of players.
Okay.
This is usually comes down to what do they prefer? Do they prefer playing the 4th Phenomenus and then bumping this up to 4, the Fervent Will? Or do they want to play something niche? I believe in Puerto Rico, the Valkyrian player there played Replar, which is a Himiko card.
Yeah.
And so they use that to their advantage because you can just absorb all the criticals that Valkyrian has, or like say Phenomenus has, and then have Replar swing for big critical as well. Otherwise, I think it's very like a standard Valkyrian list. It's not really over the top, as you would say. There's nothing too niche about it. I think it's pretty much a solved list, I would say, for Valkyrian right now.
Gotcha. Yeah, that was my question too in the back of my mind. Like I saw you at the 3 Gleipnir. There's the other grade too. Is the Ferentz's Will? Is that what it's called? You were playing only... Oh, go ahead.
So yeah, that's the Fervent Will and the Gleipnir. I used to have the idea that Fervent Will at 1 was the right call because you would only ever need to ride it because it counts as a 4 in your soul, and so you only really use it for the 1 turn, and it opens up your deck a lot more. Though one of my friends at my local scene is kind of like beat it over my head that you're going to BCS, you should play the second one just in case, because like so like let's say you grade stuck and then you take a damage and it's Fervent Will. Now you don't have that card available for you, or you draw into your first one. Now you can't thin your deck out by a card.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense too. Go ahead. And
Gleipnir is also another card because like in a situation where you're dry checking like maybe 5 cards in because of Valkyrian, you could dry check a lot of your pieces into your soul.
Yeah.
So you could dry check a bunch of your Astral Poets, or you could dry check a Phenomenus in there, or a Valkyrian again for next turn. Being able to go Gleipnir and grab that is pretty good. Also, Gleipnir's 20k does pop up a lot. It's a 20k beat stick with a Soul Blast, which is much better than having the extra Fervent Wills, which are just 10ks and can't hit without a booster.
Right. Yeah. No, thanks for explaining that too, because some people would either play the one-of or maybe go to 3 copies, 4 copies, so they just want to make sure they see it. That makes a lot of sense too.
Yeah.
With your style, like there's a lot of crits. I noticed that. So if you scroll down, you're playing 12 crit, right?
Correct. I am playing 12 critical.
And so I think that's pretty much standard for Valkyrian, just to have the additional aggression. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would say so. You can go Force 1 or Force 2, depending on personal preference, and also the matchups. There are specific matchups or specific situations where you want to go Force 1 over Force 2 for your markers. And that 12 crits still make up for the lack of Force 2 criticals that you have.
Yes.
But generally you want to go Force 2 because being able to give 12 critical, is that so then you can have those situations where you rip a draw trigger that could have been a Sentinel crit, and you could have been able to push for game on that situation. So it's much better to have the criticals over the draw PGs. Theoretically as well, you already have a Sentinel of your own kind with the Eostis Dragon, with its second ability to be a perfect card that isn't a Sentinel.
Right.
So by discarding an Astral Poet or Astral Deity, so you don't really need the Sentinels that much. If you are able to, if you have an extra one in your hand and you want to live that turn, you can do something like discard an Astral Poet and then still keep your Sentinel crits in deck.
Yeah, that makes sense too. Cool. It has the aggression, you still have protection, then you're good to go. With the meta game, you had mentioned that like you were pretty well versed with Astral Poets, but like, you know, when you go into an event, like what made you just pick Astral Poets? Is it just because you're very confident in it and you enjoy the deck, or is there more to it?
It's a little bit of everything. I've been playing the deck for quite a long time, so it's definitely like it's the deck I have the most experience with. And going into a best of 1 situation, a snowball deck like a high roller is never a bad option to pick up for an event like this, because if things go your way, you're going to steamroll through your opponents. Also, it came out to questioning if my opponents could respect the deck. Would they respect what Astral Poet's playstyle is, and would they be able to play around that? Respect, I mean, as in damage denying you, slowly getting you to making you work for those markers rather than immediately aggroing you and then losing out because they gave you too much damage.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. That actually kind of leads into my next question. Like, did your opponents even know how to play against it?
Definitely. I think a lot of my opponents would groan when they saw the Astral Poet started, the Pan of New Style.
Yeah.
And then they would be like, okay, it's Genesis. We don't know what it could be. And then once they saw the B Crooks or the DK, they definitely were like, okay, it's this deck. Though I think because of what the format is right now, it felt like a lot of the decks have to play aggressive, or they just end up losing.
I agree.
I didn't run into a Luard at regionals, but one of the Nyros players I ran into pushed me to 5 damage before I was on grade 2 by doing the whole 4 attack combo you can do.
Yep.
And then ended up losing right off the bat because they just got one-shotted by Val. They went from 1 to 6 on just one go. That unfortunately happened to an Anj player as well. They because Anj is such an aggressive deck to begin with because of Lizelot and stuff like that.
Yeah.
They opened ridiculously well as well. They like rode their grade 1, called Lizelot, and then got the 13k booster or like the grade 3 searcher. That's also a 13k booster for Angel for Bermuda Triangle. So they were immediately 23k line. They pushed me to 5 damage. Unfortunately, they went 0 to 6 again. It just happens. It just happens that you 0 to 6 your opponent with Valkyrian. But no, the opponent.
Oh, to clarify, was that the Valkyrian attack, or just you're talking about as a turn? You just...
So it was as a turn. Okay. I would force 2. I was just like, I'm in a desperate situation. I need to get my force 2s going.
Yep.
I swung with Valkyrian. They no guarded because they only had apparently they only had the 1 perfect guard, and then I ripped nothing critical. So Valkyrian dealt them 3 damage. My Vanguard had the 3 force 2s required for the Astral Plane, so I swung with Vanguard. They unfortunately had to 2-pass me and resulted in me ripping more critical triggers. And unfortunately, I broke through their 2-pass and sealed the game there.
Oh wow. That
it just happens. Yeah. I literally looked at them and said I was going to lose. They knew it as well, and there was no hard feelings. They knew that that's how the deck plays.
Yeah.
So like they just lost to the high roll. Unfortunately, the last chance high roll.
Gotcha. Well, that's pretty cool. Is there anything that you want to mention about your deck, or go into other matchups? Any key highlights? Anything like that?
Yeah, I think the only matchup that I was like kind of struggled with was. Is I think Valk's force matchups are Thavas and Night Rose in particular, because Night Rose is the strongest Protect 1 deck right now in the format. It's the only Protect deck right now that has a viable chance in the format.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of hard for Valkyrian, especially if the Night Rose player goes first. Then I have to actually damage deny them. I have to switch up my game plan to force 1 just so I can beat them. And then Thavas, because they draw so much, I can't ever check them for PGs. Like I can't look at it, see their dry checks, or look at their damage checks and see if they got a perfect guard or not. I have to just swag it, and hopefully they don't have any.
Right. No, that makes sense.
And that was my one loss in Swiss as well. It was to a Thavas player who just drew into their perfect guards through Pursuit Assaults and like Nerisas and stuff.
It was a secret.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, pretty much.
Gotcha. How was your top 8?
I ran into Charlie.
Oh, that's ironic.
Yeah, I ran into Charlie. He looked at me and we were like, okay. I knew how to play it. I went force 1. Unfortunately, I lived his Night Rose turn. Luckily, because of a 2 defensive, so I was able to hit. None of his Night Rose attacks were going to do anything after that.
Yep.
And so he ended up with like 5 cards in his hand, ended up including his Protect marker. So he had 1 perfect guard I knew about, and so unfortunately I didn't top deck anything to get me to Valkyrian.
Ooh.
Because he lived my first Valk turn, because he wrote Beatrice first.
Yeah.
He wrote Beatrice first. He didn't do much combo because he wanted to save his CB for Night Rose.
Yep.
Went in for lived my first Valkyrian turn, and then I lived his Night Rose turn, but didn't see any of the pieces that could get me to Valkyrian.
Yeah.
So, for example, I didn't see Eosnus or a Valk just straight up, or even a Gleipnir, or even a DK that could get me to the dragon here. I didn't see any of those. And so, especially because I had a Valken Soul and I had a Dragon Soul. So Gleipnir would have been like the perfect card in that situation.
Mm-hmm. You could just add it to hand pretty easy.
Yeah, and so I just kind of like raw swung, and he hit a defensive and turned off my turn. Off of his... on my first rearguard attack, I swung with 13k. He took it. He shut down my second rearguard because I blanked on. He perfect guarded my Vanguard, and then my second rearguard couldn't hit because I didn't hit a trigger.
Gotcha. Well, it's unfortunate a little bit too. But other than that, what was your Swiss record, if you don't mind me asking?
It was X1.
That's really solid.
Yeah. I only had the 1 loss again to the Thavas player, I said, that drew their perfect guards off their engine pieces. So otherwise, everything else went my way in terms of matchups.
No, that's good to hear.
Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense. Thanks for even breaking down your matchups too. One of the things that I like to ask people too, like right after the tournament, like did you learn something for yourself or maybe reaffirm a couple of things, anything like that?
I definitely felt the nerves, I guess, from top 8. Like once I got there, I felt like I was like, man, hopefully I don't fail deck check. I don't, hopefully the deck works. Hopefully I do really well. Of course, I was a one and done in top 8, but I didn't feel bad about it because Charlie's such an incredible player. He's someone who's helped me grow as a player as well. So I was really thankful about it. To that my run at regionals ended to a guy who's also going to Worlds. So always great to see that. Otherwise, it definitely taught me a lot on how good it feels to come out to a BCS event. Like I've been playing the game for almost 2017, so 6 years.
Okay.
Around near once the second half of G started, that's when I really started playing the game.
Yep.
And so 6 years I spent not being able to go to an event, and so finally going out there really kind of showed how much fun it is, how incredible it is experience. Just meeting people, even though I didn't get their names, I still got to meet people,
interact
and
with
play
them.
Exactly.
No, it's really cool. I think a few people highlight that sometimes, and it should be a little more common because the community, especially if you're with friends, it's just a blast at that point too. While you're also still competing at the same time. So even if you feel like you didn't do so well, you could still honestly say that you did have a good time with peeps, at least.
Yeah, no, completely. That's how my day 2 went. My day 2 was atrocious. It's so bad.
Gotcha. But yeah, and that's another memory for the books too. And if it's your first top, you always will remember your first top, regardless how it panned out or not.
Yeah, 100%.
No, that's really good. And with players too that are also still trying to get their first top or maybe struggling to retop again, what's some advice that you think that holds people back?
I don't know if it's definitely sometimes players are just their worst enemies, I guess it would be the worst way of saying it.
Ooh. Mm-hmm.
But it's I think there's always a mental barrier when it comes to competitive hobbies like Vanguard, whether that be esport as well, any kind of hobby that's competitive scene. There's always a mental barrier about it, wondering if you're good enough to be there. I know I had that feeling as well. I know that I've had those feelings where I've also said Vanguard sucks. It's a luck-based game. This game isn't great. There's not a lot of skill because you could just rip triggers and whatnot. A great case that the deck I played is a luck-based one. So touche to younger B. But I think there's always that barrier that you have to kind of cross over. And once you get over that barrier, whether that be, even if you're an experienced player, there's always going to be that barrier. Maybe you're setting your expectations too high. Maybe you're setting your expectation. Maybe you're just not performing well because you're not making the right choices. Yeah. And that's a really important thing as well. I willingly played. I would have loved to have played any kind of niche deck that I would like, but I knew that the best choices for me were to play Valkyrian, and that was the deck for me. That was the right deck for my choice to go to regionals.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. And the way you broke it down too is that it does come to your decisions, but knowing what is viable and also you're confident in, and then of course that mental barrier if you're even worthy enough of topping. Sometimes people struggle with that too. So yeah, what you speak is more common than you think, actually. Yeah. So that mental barrier is, I don't know how to describe it, but sometimes as you keep participating or practicing and honing your skills, eventually things will just click, and then eventually you'll get into your first top.
Yeah, no, 110%. I definitely felt the nervous factor as the rounds kept going. Oh yeah. Because I set myself with an X2 goal. I didn't have any big ambitions to top this regionals. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was just it's my first regional event. If I go X2 positive, that's still a very good day. Especially once they announced 6 rounds. So I was okay, at least I won 66% of my go 4-2. That's a pretty good first regionals. And then as it kept going, as I reached round 5, I realized, I'm about to go X1 if I win here. And then, round 6, I was there's still a shot. Made top 8. I was just felt incredible. I think you just have to push yourself a little bit slightly and just get over that mental barrier. I remember that a lot. When I was newer to the game, I just played these fun decks that don't do well, and then I was asking myself why I wasn't doing too well. I knew that I thought, it was just the game itself rather than like me as a player, and kind of had to look inside myself and say, no, it was me as a player that made that bad call.
That's hard sometimes for people to like kind of slow down and like, maybe I can do better.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe it's not the game. Maybe it's not my opponent, or it's the luck based factor, right?
Yeah, 110%.
No, that's really good. And that kind of leads to my question. And in your case, you're a Metafy student. So for you, it's kind of like your own personal testimony. Like, what have you seen the value in Metafy that has helped you really achieve your first top?
It definitely has helped me grow leaps and bounds as a player. I think otherwise, like I wouldn't have expected myself to be at this position. Like maybe a year ago when we first met, I didn't think I didn't see myself topping ever in a situation there. And now where I'm at, like, of course, having that and just being able to learn from other people. It's always good to learn things from more experienced players. Whether even if you don't like talk about the game, just playing the game, being able to understand how they're playing the game compared to how you are, it shows the big differences as a player between the experienced players and like the top players and like those that are like just crossing into being a top player.
Yeah. Gotcha.
And
that's good to hear. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, that's all I really had to say about that.
No, that's a big thing because, like you said, like a year ago, you didn't even see yourself, and sometimes that's a challenge in itself. And having somebody that help you cross that, whether it be a coach or just friends in general, is a big deal. And now you reach that achievement, which is something that you could always remember for.
Yeah, 100%.
Here's what's cool is that you develop another level of confidence for yourself now because you've done it.
Yeah. I think this was the top 8 was what I was expecting myself for my like second or third BCS or a BSF event, not like for first one. Now for myself in this really bad situation, it's like, oh man, if I don't get top 8 or at least like do well enough, the expectation kind of like maybe I peaked too early as a player, right? That's really, but that's just another challenge, I guess, for myself that I'm gonna put myself for a little bit. Maybe, who knows, we'll do better next year. We'll do the same, whoever, but we'll take it as strides for a road to improvement.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I would recommend to players too, I've talked about this too before, is that, once you top like the first time, just do it again. Just focus on doing what you already did. So that way you can start building that confidence up so you can start consistently topping throughout the months and years that you participate at events too. And so it starts there. So that's the beautiful thing about it too. So I'm excited for you to like cross that new side of the journey for you at that point too.
Yeah, I'm excited as well. I'm very excited. We'll see how things go, of course. And hopefully it's with a different format. I would like to definitely top with a different format, whether that be standard or premium. That's the next goal there.
That's awesome. A different format, different goal. Like, that's awesome, man. Happy for
100%,
you.
100%.
Just to wrap up the interview, do you have any shout outs that you want to give out?
I guess shout out goes to you and Charlie Tran for the coaching. I know a lot of people say Metafy doesn't work. It does. It really does work. You learn from so many experienced players. You learn from a lot. Like, here's the thing is that even when pro players are like from like other games, like proper esport games, or using coaching systems, and like you'll see their improvements. So it doesn't matter that even TCGs can see that kind of improvement. Even Yu-Gi-Oh players like use Metafy to improve, and that's a much higher skill ceiling game when it comes to competitive nature. Another shout out goes to the community here in Calgary. Like, I have a bunch of people here I was the only one from my friend circle to go. It was the rest of our community that went. And so having a bunch of my friends kind of like, cheer me on, like support out with my practice. Even though they weren't going, I kind of like felt their support for that, and just felt really awesome. And just again, goes to the entire community at Vanguard of BCS Richmond. Like, I had an amazing first experience playing my first ever BCS, and that couldn't have been done by. I met some wonderful people, even people who lost and I lost to, or were kind of salty with their losses. They never took that. That's kind of like a negative thing. They still shook my hand, and that's still always a great sign. Always, I'll still see that as a positive thing. At the end of the day, we're playing a hobby that we're all having fun, and I'm glad to have had a lot of fun in my first BCS event, and I hope to do it again for BSF and next year's BCS tournament and whatever the future holds for me.
That's awesome, my man. So again, thanks again for hopping on. It's a great opportunity to even just see your growth, but at the same time, just show you your recognition for your achievement, man. So
thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, you're very welcome. So until the very next time, amigos. Bye.
See you later.